We'll all be in this together. Welcome to the town hall meeting for the town of Lucerne. And I'm Denise Rusing, District 3 Supervisor. Most of you probably know me. I'd like to go over the agenda for the town hall meeting. I'm going to give you just a little, very short overview. How many of you have never attended a town hall meeting here before? So just take, well, a good number. So we'll go quickly just to go over what the process is. We'll give a very brief county issues update. We kind of have another town hall meeting in either late March or early April. And the topic of that particular town hall will be the college in Marymount will be here, sharing with you their plans. So once we get a date set with them, I'll be able to make an announcement. And then we'll talk about the county efforts on the Lucerne water issue. How many of you are unfamiliar that there's a water issue in Lucerne? I figure that's why most of you are here. And then I'll open it up for community topics. So if there are any community organizations here that want to make announcements or talk about things of interest to the community of Lucerne, we'll open it up at that point. And then it's open forum time. And I have, a lot of people don't like to speak in public. I haven't found that's a problem in Lucerne, but if you'd like to speak, but you really don't want to stand up and talk, I'll have cards for you where you can write down your questions. And so I'm going to ask somebody to volunteer to start passing these out now. If you raise your hand if you need a pen, because we have a handful of pens. So Jerry, here's a few pens. Hopefully the pen's right. They've been out in the cold. And then any announcements that need to be made at the end, okay? So we'll start with the overview. All right, so the objective of the town hall meeting is typically to provide an update. And usually I use these town hall meetings to provide an update on county issues, county budget, etc. It's also my opportunity to listen to you on certain topics that, particularly what my priorities should be as your supervisor, what I should be working on for you. And then I also use these to identify opportunities for you to get involved. And so I usually have calls to actions that you can take. Look for those. What this isn't is a public hearing. This is not an official public hearing on any particular topic. So we're not taking testimony or anything like that right now. We're not covering other towns. So if you have a problem in Clear Lake Oaks or in Nice, see me afterwards. But this is for Lucerne. We're not going to do a lengthy debate on specific topics, although we will be covering water a bit today. And then this is not for individual issues. So if your neighbor's parking a car in front of your house, see me afterwards. We're not going to use the town hall for that. Okay, so the agenda, county issues update. Really the only issue besides water that I want to share with you today. First of all, let me introduce a few people that are in the room. We have representing Senator Noreen Evans' office, Jeff Terrell here. Jeff, why don't you stand up? And I want to say Senator Noreen Evans' office is very interested in the water issue, as is Mariko Yamada. So both of the state legislators are, they're actually working on this. We have from the county a number of folks that are here. Our county council is Anita Grant. Is that true?
That is my first one.
Anita has done a lot of research for us on this water issue. It's a difficult topic, and I needed to ask for legal help, which is one of the reasons she's here to help. We have a couple of county folks here representing the admin office, Alan Flora, Deputy Administrator, and Eric Seeley, who you formerly redevelopment director. And Eric is also the project manager for the Marymount College occupation of the castle. And Eric will be actually located here helping with that project as that project gets underway. So one of the first issues we probably should share with you is what's going on. Marymount College is actually in possession now of the castle. You might see the sign out in front. They're planning to open for classes, four-year college. There's planning to open for classes sometime in late 2013 is what I understand. Do you guys have an update on that? Do you know when the date is? Yeah, they're thinking sometime August 2013 or September. This, in case you see him wandering around town, this is Dr. Brophy. He is the president of Marymount College down in Southern California. He'll be up here in March or April when we set the date for the town hall around his schedule to introduce you to himself, the faculty that will be here, and some of the things that the college has planned. This is a college that is very interested in community. And you have to be nice to them because their water bill is going to be about $200,000 a year, which will help out a little bit, I suppose, but it's not helping them. That's a real tough thing for them. And they're aware of it. They've been aware of it ever since they started negotiations to be here. So this is Dr. Brophy. Some of you, how many of you were able to make it to the open house? A few of you might have been there. So a handful of folks were up there. We had Dr. Brophy came dedicated, welcome folks to Marymount College, and the Chamber of Commerce had their mixer up there. So they're reaching out to the community and working hard to make sure that they do things that are helpful to Lake County. And one of the things that they're going to do is sponsor education that will actually begin to look at community issues. So that's going to be good news for us. More people. So there they are. Are there any other county folks here? Anita, Eric, Alan, any county folks that I didn't introduce? Okay, we also have are you the chair of the Senior Center Board?
No.
Okay, a member of the board of the Lucerne Alpine Senior Center. I'd like to thank.
3 members.
Okay, who are the members of the Senior Center Board that are here? Would you raise your hand? So these are the members of the Senior Center Board, and they've donated the space, although I would encourage you, if you feel so moved, I'm going to give a donation at the end in the back to the Senior Center for the use of the space. It's very expensive to operate the center, as you know. Anybody else from the county here? Okay, so let's dive into the water issue. The main purpose of this meeting is recently the Board of Supervisors voted to allow County Counsel's Office and myself to intervene on behalf of Lucerne in the rate case, the California Public Utility Commission that Calwater has filed. It's a 3-year rate case, and they're asking for about 77% increase or something like that. So the county will be, and I'll be intervening on your behalf. And I filed originally just as your supervisor, and the county's filed as an interested party, or maybe even an intervener. Can you tell me the official status of the county?
The county has filed both in its interest as a water ratepayer, but also in its representative capacity to its constituents.
Right. So our water bills are pretty substantial too for any property. Now I'm going to ask you a whole few questions for the end, so keep track of them. And if you need a card, let me know. So the county's filing on behalf, so we'll be arguing and filing testimony in the fight, right? And I'm going to share with you today, one of the purposes of this meeting is for me, as the person representing you, to gather the information that I'm going to need. There's lots of places we can get data, but there's not a lot of places we can get the stories except from you. Okay? So one of the first things I'd like to hand out is, somebody can help me do this. It's a piece of paper. Thank you. This is something that if you can fill it out before you leave, or even get it to me afterwards, it doesn't have an address on there, but there's plenty of ways to get it to me. I'm asking you to share your story, and I ask just a few simple questions. What's your highest water bill? How have water bills impacted you? And any other thoughts that you have to share about the topic. Okay, so if you could please get me some information about how this has impacted you as an individual, or as a business, or as a group, whatever. There are 3 paths that I personally, as your supervisor, have been working on, and the county is tracking in order to deal with this issue. It's been a long time. I was elected in 2006. I took office in 2007. I was personally involved in helping at the rate case that Calwater filed the last time. And you had a lawyer, Steve Elias, who subsequently died. So there's fatalities associated with this issue. Anyway, he was your lawyer at the PUC. He argued on behalf of Lucerne and was able to argue the rate increase from 273%, or whatever the number was, down to some equally high number, but something around 70 or 80%. So the 3 paths that I've been working on, and that you hopefully collectively are working on, is number 1, intervening in the rate case. Now you'll notice that Calwater isn't here. They were invited, they couldn't come, but that's okay because this is really an organizing meeting for us. So number 1, intervene in the Calwater general rate case. Number two is advocate for legislation. In both Senator Evans' office and Enrico Yamada's office, the kind of legislation that would be required would take a very long time. It might involve things like affordability caps that the PUC has to abide by. It would certainly be lobbied by corporate interests everywhere. But affordability caps would be one kind of legislation. Another kind of legislation might be making companies like Calwater compare their rates to similarly situated companies. So those are the kinds of things that we'll argue in the rate case at the PUC, but really the PUC may not listen to that. It's going to be only through legislation that some of these things may happen. So advocating for legislation is another path. And the third is investigating the county takeover of the water system. That is a really difficult path, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but it's not totally impossible, but it's difficult. I'll share with you what the path is for that. Okay, so on the rate situation, which is the most near term, you have existing rates that are asking for more. And the first step or action that you can take in the rate area would be, number one, tell your story. So I've given you the form, but if you don't want to do that today, if you want to use, we've got a website up called lucernestories.org, so feel free to go to the website and have your friends go to. And you know what I'd like to do is collect as many real stories from real people on how this issue is impacting you as we possibly can. The second is write the California Public Utility Commission. And the California Public Utility Commission, you could write them regarding this particular rate case at Calwater, or you could write them if you're having difficulties with Calwater. They are the regulators, and so most of you probably know by now that the county doesn't regulate Calwater. We really don't have any power over them, except when they want a permit for a water pipe or something like that. So we don't have the ability to tell them what to do. We do have the ability to file on your behalf, obviously, but we don't have a lot of other power around that. So I would urge you to write the PUC. They are the ones that regulate them, and will be, I know our legislators have already written the PUC and have been doing that, as has the county government. So the Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to write the PUC. We've also written legislators. We've really been advocating on behalf of Lucerne, and the voice needs to get louder. The third is, if you don't already know, it's not much, but the rate assistance program has gone up. And Alan, maybe you could brief folks on what you learned about the rate assistance program as you're looking into this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Stand up.
Currently, you're able to get basically reimbursed, or there's a reduction on your bill, $24 a month, so the $48 a billing cycle. I think that's about the highest rate that they have for any of their systems in California. The rate case and the rate increase includes an increase in that assistance program, which I think is $36 a month. So it's not much, but it is a little something, and we have the forms here available. You can also apply online.
Right. And one of the things we will argue, I think, and probably the legislators will in their letters as well, is that rate assistance needs to be much greater. So we have the forms. They're in the back. If you'd like one, we can pass this around. Just take one as well. So we'll pass it on. You have to qualify for this, and it'll say how. But anyway. So if you do qualify, please apply. If you do qualify, please apply for the program. And then finally, you have a representative of your state legislature here, somebody who's the aide to Senator Noreen Evans. And so contact your state legislator, and let them know that that this is an issue that's important to you. And so, fortunately, you have that opportunity today. So legislation, the action you can take, again, one action will solve a couple things. Tell your story. So please get us your stories. I will be sharing this with the legislators as well as the PUC, and they will be able to use that hopefully in the future. The kind of legislation that might also help Lucerne greatly is Governor Brown is planning a water infrastructure fund. And that's not been voted on, I don't think, by the legislature at this point. But Senator Evans' office tells me that she would like to see, for example, that infrastructure fund be used for disadvantaged communities that have issues like this to maybe help. That's the kind of money we would need for the third item I'll be talking about. But certainly contacting your state legislature and letting them know that this is important to you. Then finally, the idea of a takeover is a very long-term process. It requires Board of Supervisors support, which has not happened, and we have not voted on anything like this yet. The first thing that is coming to the board is actually coming this Tuesday. I'm bringing it to the board and I'm asking for staff support to analyze the process. And you'll know at the end of that meeting whether or not the Board of Supervisors supports the idea of even beginning to look at it, right? So if you care about this issue, you may want to come to that Board of Supervisor meeting and let the board know that you care. The board is very well aware of the water bills that concern you. That's why we intervene on behalf of the citizens. And also we're receiving as a county our own bills that are really substantial, and we're aware that that's not good either.
Excuse me? What date and time is that?
Okay, I'll get to that in a second. We'll announce in a second. So I'll get to the action page on the next page, and you get the date and time. Now, a takeover of the system would require state or federal funding. And the reason is, let me just give you order of magnitude. It's my personal estimate, and this is just looking at the system and what we see in similar systems. This system's probably somewhere between $20 and $30 million. Just to give you order of magnitude, the county receives in tax revenue from property tax every year about $16 million. So it's almost double what we actually, as a county, the whole county receives, or everyone in the county, in property tax revenue. Our general fund every year is about $50 million. That's because we get a lot of money from the state, and almost all of that, a good share of that goes to criminal justice system. So this system, to buy it, is something well beyond anything the county could possibly afford. It's probably, again, $20 to $30 million. It would take, and we don't know that for sure, that would be part of the analysis, but it would take action on the part of the state legislature and or the federal legislature to grant the money for something like this. And that would come out as something like a water infrastructure fund. So needless to say, it's an extremely long process. It would require legislation at the state. It would require that we qualify for the funding that sits in that legislation, and it would require us to go through a process. The process itself would involve appraising the water system. Every pipe, every meter, every valve, every office, everything would have to go through an appraisal process. If Calwater doesn't want to sell it, then it's even more expensive because you tack onto that the legal costs of fighting them. So it's not an inexpensive proposition. It may not be economically viable to go through the process, but I'd like the analysis done to know for sure. And if it is even close to economically viable, just County Council, close your ears for a second. This is something I will support. I will support that. If we can make it economically viable, we will. The first step is process and options analysis. We need to know what our options are. We need to know where the money would come from and what would be the options for where the money would come from. And we need a guesstimate just to even begin. And that's what I'm going to ask the board for on Tuesday. So the actions you can take is make sure the state legislature knows that the water infrastructure fund is important to you. And attend the Board of Supervisors meeting next week. It's on Tuesday at 10:45 a.m. at the Board of Supervisors chambers at the courthouse. So that's the update that I have on the water issue. It's not a pretty picture. I know that this is really difficult, or even more than difficult. People are losing their homes over this issue in Lucerne, and it's of grave concern to myself and to the Board of Supervisors. We're doing what we can as a county, which isn't there's not a whole lot that we can do, but we're doing everything that we can do. And we'll go from there. We'll do our best. So at this point, are there any community people that, Lenny, do you have an announcement?
Yes.
Okay, so anybody representing community organizations that make announcements on this issue or other issues that you'd like to make, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, so everything's been done. Water company says, forget it. We don't want to give it to you. We don't want to sell it. Along comes Roaring Mouse Alliance. Doug Ream down at, he's the guy who put this one together. We have Flow. Flow's a locally owned water. Flow is now a 501c3, which means they can't cause trouble, we can. We can get together and go down to San Jose, occupy San Jose, their main plant for 2 days, occupy San Jose, and cause so much trouble, make them look so bad as to what they're doing to the impoverished town of Lucerne, get negative publicity all over the place that they want to get out of here, bad. So when it comes down to getting rid of the water company, they want to sell. So what I'm going to do is pass this little basket around. We're trying to get money to be able to pick up the water company and be able to be an activist organization. Additionally, the funds that go into this, we're splitting it with the senior center for the heat that you're feeling in the building that they're paying for.
Thank you for turning the heat on, by the way. Your turn.
Okay, so basically, it's interesting that you say that they need to have $20 or $30 million to buy this water company, when just in fact, 10 years ago, they purchased it for around $3 million from Domingos. They purchased it from Bob Strauss for $785,000, you know. And I did make a little error in my letter when I wrote it to the, and I apologize, it wasn't meant as an attack on the Strausses. I love the Strausses, so it wasn't like that. It was just supposed to be the historical
Might
event.
want to speak up just a little.
Okay, yes, I've been doing this Christmas play, so I'm getting a little sore in here, but Miracle on 34th Street. What we need to do here is we need to make it so uncomfortable for this company to stay in business in this town. We want them to want to beg to get out of town. Now, I've heard stories like people, I've heard little rumors around, I don't know who's saying this, but I've heard people say they're going to blow the water company up. That is the last thing we want. A, that's going to interfere with our infrastructure right now, and B, it's going to make it, any efforts we do become criminal and thus invalidate any efforts that we're doing in this thing. What we're talking about is things like picketing the water company. We're talking about things like maybe paying the bill in pennies, just, you know, insisting that they read the meters, you know, insisting that they're there when they read the meters. Just in general, making life a living hell for these people. Nothing impolite, nothing rude, and nothing illegal, because none of us want to be reflected on like that. My situation here is that I know for a fact that so many people have come to me after I wrote this article in the paper about how serious their condition was. Myself, I had an $1,800 bill, and that was kind of a shock. And a lot of the businesses on the strip were hit really heavily in July. $1,200, $1,800, $900. Ridiculous. It's just crazy. And people are, as she says, are losing their homes. In addition to that, what's happening is people are not maintaining good hygiene anymore. They're bathing like once a week just to keep the water down, the water costs down. This is ridiculous. This is affecting people's mental and physical health, and it has to stop. So what we're doing right now is the first thing that the Roaring Mouse is doing was to write the letters. The next thing is that we are going to send a letter to Calwater requesting that they drop their rates immediately, and I'll give them 7 days to come up with the response, which of course will be no. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start nailing those letters to the New York Stock Exchange, and whatever it takes to really make these people realize that squirming. We may end up having them, we may end up doing a petition or picketing down in San Jose. I'm writing a letter to the Mercury News. I just want these people to be super uncomfortable, and that's all we can do at this point. I know we all have
contacted by the Mercury. Yeah.
So what we need from you guys is that the dog and pony show about all the sad stories. Yes, we know it's happening, but they don't give a damn. Just like Jim Hankins in his letter said, we know they don't give a damn. If they gave a damn, they wouldn't have the highest water rates in the state of California, in a little town with this kind of income. It just would not happen. If they cared, they would. So to give them all the dog and pony shows doesn't matter. What it does matter is to give it to the CPUC. And whether the CPUC is in bed with Calwater, we don't know. How they can even allow this kind of raping of a small town, this beautiful, wonderful community that I've been here for 34 years. I can't believe that they would let this happen. Exactly. My point is, for you to complain to Calwater is wasting your efforts. They don't give a darn. So what we need as many people as we can to get on board to help us with letter writing, with picketing, with donation of funds. We even have a Roaring Mouse Fund that we have that we're going to be.
You don't need a fictitious name, it turns out.
So that's what we have. In the back, we have been passing out a petition for a couple of months now, and we have probably over 1,100 signatures on that petition. That's got to mean something. It's got to mean something. When we take that down to PUC, I will be a personal participant in this thing myself. But this is a town that I've lived in, and I love this town, and I love these people. For this to happen, it's just serious. So what we're asking you to do is get involved, call my office, call Lenny, sign the petition, and just become on board as much as you can. Anybody that wants to become part of this movement, by all means, there are these little down there. You can take a copy of it with you, and we're going to be using this. We'll have T-shirts. We're going to have all this kind of stuff. But it's ridiculous for us to think that we can do enough bake sales to buy this water company. It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we have to have a 501c in order to cut down the taxes so that we could, buy this water. There is no freaking way. And then the other thing that we have to think about is that, when it's a 501c, we can't become politically active. Because when you have a 501c, you can't make political statements, you can't get involved in politics. So that whole thing about flow, wonderful as it was, I was involved with it myself for 2 years, just didn't work. So we have to do it from a lot more aggressive point of view, a lot more, and everybody has to get on board, everybody has to fight, because these are the enemies.
Our DA just walked in.
These are the enemies here.
One other thing to everybody, pay your bill the day that it's due, and pay it legal tender, you can't do pennies. I found out from an attorney, you can't do pennies. Legal tender, you can do silver dollars. Get hold of your bank. Bring them in silver dollars.
Didn't know that.
Pennies are legal tender, however, private companies can set the manner of their payment.
There you go.
That's the difference.
Okay. Okay. Make it as difficult, bring it in $1 bills. Make it as difficult as possible.
That you can do.
We will have another meeting soon at my house. We had a meeting. Alan was there, and Denise was there, and I had about 9 or 10 other people that were really excited about this. And we're going to have a meeting with Anita Grant here, and we'll have probably make it. The last minute thing I know is you guys are busy. I understand, and I'm busy too, so it's hard to make. But I have to plan this ahead. But we're here. We're going to fight for it. And the thing is, we have to drive the Calwater out of town. They are ruining our town. This is the biggest problem that's ever hit this community in the 35 years that I've been here. So get on board, and anything that I can do, let me know, because we're doing a lot. But if you have any other ideas, contact me at my office. Everyone knows where my office is. It's Dennis Street under the clock tower in Lucerne, right across from Kenny's store. And just get on board. Anybody that can help, let's do it. Thank you.
Are there any other community organizations that want to make an announcement? Okay, so let's open it up to questions. And if you need a card, would you raise your hand and somebody will give you a card? You all feel free to speak in public. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I do have some remarks to make. The first I knew of this water situation was Dr. Doug's letter 2 months ago, and as a renter in North Shore Villas, we don't see the water bill, but ultimately it will get reflected in next year's rent increase, I'm sure. I'm surprised that this situation got to this point, that all of a sudden it's like trying to fight Niagara Falls coming over, and it's because we all sat and waited for somebody else to do it. We're going to have to work together on this. And at the meeting at the Lucerne School a couple of months ago, there were 2 ladies sitting there that didn't live here. They were from Upper Lake and Blue Lakes, I believe. They were advised 2 years ago by a realtor not to buy in Lucerne because of the horrific water rates and the cost of living here, and the fact that people were already closing businesses and selling their homes. So we've let this sit long enough, and we need cooperation from everybody here and everybody you can talk to. Because if we don't all work together, we won't accomplish what Dr. Doug is working so hard for. Thank you.
In the back.
Paperwork right now being floated about doing an eminent domain.
Right, that's the third option I talked about. So that would be, that's the only way the county could take it over if Calwater didn't want to sell it, if Calwater did want to sell it. Anita, would eminent domain be required if they did want to sell it? No.
No, in fact, the CPUC tends to look quite favorably on public entities taking over from private water companies who've just had enough or are failing for one reason or another. So if they were agreeable, it would be a much different situation.
And again, that's going to require the Board of Supervisors agree that it's a good idea. I can tell you special districts runs all, I mean, special districts is not the most beloved department either because they issue bills and people pay water bills for them. However, they run an efficient shop. They're running many water systems out of one office, and they're local. They know how to run a local water system with this lake, right? So they know how to do it, and our bills as a county, the systems that special districts manages, are much lower. They're about half what the bills are in Lucerne. They're going to go up. I mean, we have costs as does Calwater to meet current regulations, so, and also the lake condition obviously is affecting what it takes to drink the water. But the bills of people that are, the plants aren't as expensive as the one Calwater. That's the bottom line. Their plant is just way too expensive. The other thing is, and I'm going to speak a little bit out of turn here, and the county council will correct me if I'm wrong, but the plant that was purchased by Calwater, they got a public loan for that. Now, as a private company, they're not able to advocate for forgiveness of that loan, even on behalf of the residents of Lucerne. They can't really do that, whereas government could. So if it were a government-run system, we could ask for forgiveness for some of that loan. That might be an avenue, and that's what got me to thinking about the idea. But eminent domain is a tool. It's not the answer. It's a tool, and it would be a tool only under the circumstance where Calwater absolutely said, it's not for sale, we're going to fight you. Right? That would be when you use that tool, and you have to come up with the legal money to fight it as well.
Aren't there grants that we might be available if the county owns the water that we can't get now for improving the infrastructure as well?
There are grants available. I could say that there's not, at this moment, the grants are kind of in short supply, but with this infrastructure fund that Governor Brown has planned, there may be more grants available. And again, I doubt that Calwater would qualify for many of those, or if any. So, other questions, concerns? Let's see if anybody else. Okay, go ahead.
Or if this water expenses causes health problems, people not able to take showers, whatever, isn't it eminent domain much easier under all circumstances?
That's a good legal question. I'm glad our lawyer came. It's kind of a stretch, I would say. Let me try to answer it. You'll say if I'm wrong. It's a legal stretch to say that health problems are caused by people not taking showers. I mean, to say that we would take over the system because they've created a public health hazard. On the other hand, we have the government power ultimately, and this Board of Supervisors up until now has been very, very reluctant to use eminent domain. It's an awesome government power. It's one of these powers that can make people scared of government, right? Where government can come and take private property or take your property. That's something the Board of Supervisors has been very reluctant to exercise. We'll see in this circumstance, there'll be a little bit of discussion, I imagine, on Tuesday, whether if that comes up, if that would be something this board would ultimately be willing to do. If they're not willing to do it, then to analyze it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so it's going to be an interesting discussion that this board has. Anita, did I answer that?
Yes, you did. The only thing I would say is that the public health issues do implicate the public necessity for the takeover, for the action by eminent domain. The issue still becomes, and the reason why it's so lengthy a process, if they disagree, you still have to pay fair market value for the property. And because this is an income-producing property, you have to calculate the income stream. It's a very complicated process that involves a lot of lawyers and a lot of appraisers and all the people that you normally don't want involved in anything. So.
Yes.
Is there a statute or something that Lucerne can use? Because the water company is a public entity. It has a public product. So it has to, of course, work under regulation.
Yeah.
Isn't there something that Lucerne, or a statute that
Well,
would back up that?
There's plenty of things that can back it up. They were issued probably, and this is, I'm going to speak from my utility knowledge now. It may not be 100% accurate because I'm using electric utility knowledge, but typically private companies that provide public services are issued something from the California Public Utility Commission called the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. It allows them to go into the streets and rip up for pipes and things like that. They're the public utility. And in exchange for being the only utility in town, they agree to be regulated. Well, they're not regulated by the county, obviously. They're regulated by the California Public Utility Commission. So they aren't allowed to charge whatever they want. They're actually told that what they can and can't charge, and that's why there's this general rate hearing. So it's a process that's kind of convoluted, but over time, because the Public Utility Commission doesn't really hear much from the general public, and they're really not beholden to the general public. They're an appointed body by the governor. The checks and balances are just a little bit difficult. Calwater has a long-time relationship with them on many rate cases over the course of time, not just this one, but hundreds of other ones. And so they develop relationships with staff and the commission, and they know how to work the process. Lucerne comes in, and you have a lawyer who pro bono last time fought the whole case for you. You've got a county supervisor who might be, not the best choice, but the only choice at this moment to, argue testimony in front of the Public Utility Commission. We're not as experienced in that process. Fortunately, we have lawyers that will help, and the county has the weight of that. We have our own legal staff, but it's a tough process for someone who's not in it every single day. And the nature of rate making is if they prove that the costs were valid, then the PUC generally figures out a way that they'll get those costs covered in rates. That's sort of how it works. The fact that the costs are beyond affordability doesn't seem to weigh into the current process, although it has increased this fund, this rate fund that allows there to be a rebate back. And as you know, the rebate's not much. I mean, it works out to be in a billing cycle $48 right now. That's $24 a month. And so it's not a whole lot, especially when your bill is on average $320. And that's the average bill for a 2-month period.
Hidden Valley had problems with their company with the rating, and they actually went in and investigated and found that they were charging too much for the area, and they had to end up redoing their rating.
Yeah, as far as I know, Hidden Valley is a public service district.
Yeah. Oh,
They're not like a Calwater.
Oh. But it seems
As
to
is
me-
Nice. Nice is a mutual. There's all different kinds of governance for water companies. Nice is its own companies. The shareholders are the ratepayers. The special districts around the community, Clear Lake Oaks is its own little water district. But the county runs a bunch of special districts. We run the one, for example, in Spring Valley, et cetera.
So the question is that we have a company that runs in San Jose where it's very expensive to operate. So obviously we need to have the revenue to operate that. It seems to me the PUC should see that Lucerne cannot possibly keep
Right.
up with rates
Right.
with a company that operates in a very
I would think, and that would be the argument that we make. I mean, for our water systems, I'll just give you an example. Anita, when was the last time we gave county employees a raise?
I think 7 years ago?
7 years ago was the last time county employees received a cost of living wage increase. And that's because we've been in a recession, and we are at Lake County, and it's really tough when your tax revenues are going down, which they are, for us to, we've asked our employees, our public service employees, our sheriff's department, all these departments, we've asked them to please don't ask for a wage increase. And this is what we've been, with our unions, this is what we've been arguing. And so 7 years have gone by, there's not been a wage increase for county employees. Calwater, their employees get wage increases. Why? Because that's just what they do. And it's considered a cost of doing business. And so it's going to be our argument that it is not a reason for cost of doing business in Lake County. And the example we're going to use is our own county operations. We're not giving increases to salaries here. Cost of living is going down in Lake County, except in Lucerne where the water rates keep going up. So, that's one of the difficult. That'll be one of the things we argue. And to the extent you have ideas, I did pass that form out. To the extent you have ideas and arguments you think we should make on your behalf, please share them. Yeah.
Okay, about the Governor Brown infrastructure thing, is that actually something that's happening, or is it something that's proposed? And if it is happening, how much money is involved? Do they allow purchasing water companies? What exactly is it? You know?
Okay, good question. So the question is, what about the infrastructure fund? As I understand it, and Jeff, you can help here, it's been proposed, what comes out of that infrastructure will be worked out in legislation. So it's legislation that's in the process.
Has not happened.
It's not happened yet.
And when do they anticipate this could happen?
Jeff?
I couldn't say for certain, but it would be at least a
50
year.
chance
Go ahead,
it
Stan.
happen,
Go
or
ahead, Stan.
30 it can happen, or
I won't place
10,
odds on
90
it.
it can happen,
I won't place odds on it. I think it's going to be an enormous waterfall. And so including additional remedies such as Denise suggested.
Yeah.
It's a
2030.
possibility, but I think it's years off.
Yeah, it might be, the actual legislation being passed, yeah, it's probably 2014. Yeah. But so is the process of, taking over. So just to give you a timeline and order of magnitude. Yeah.
How is it that these Clear Oaks have their own system? What stops Lucerne from doing a similar thing?
Lucerne used to have a system that was run by an individual, I guess. Strauss. And at the time that was for sale would have been a very good time to have formed a company to take it over. Now that it's taken over by Calwater, they probably, if we haven't asked, they probably don't want to sell it. But if they do, the process that we would need to go through is possible. It's a possible process. It's just a long, time-consuming and expensive process. The first step in that process is to understand what our options are. And that's what we'll be talking about, asking. We need the analysis, and I'm going to be asking the board to authorize county staff to at least conduct a cursory analysis of what our options are.
One obvious thing on that is if Lucerne people cannot pay what they are asking and demanding, they lose money. Then what?
They raise the rates of the ones who
Well,
can't.
some of you may have seen my op-ed piece.
America.
Yes, some of you may have seen my op-ed piece in the Record B a while back on the water issue. And the example that I used was, if everybody left town but 2 people, would each of them be responsible for half of the $8 million plant? I mean, what would be the?
The answer to that is yes, they would.
Yeah, and the answer to that, and in fact, Calwater was asked that question, and they pretty much said, yeah, that's how
According
it
to the
works.
rules.
That's how the rules work today, which shows you why the rules are messed up. And so my argument has been, we can file testimony at the PUC under the rules that exist there. My issue and my comment is the rules are not going to work in this case because of that very example. You've got foreclosures that have happened in town, you've got, businesses that have closed down. The people that remain can't afford to carry the full weight of the system. At some point, Calwater either needs to write it off or sell it off, or something needs to happen. They can't really afford to do that. And they're going to drive the town into the ground, under the current rules. And so the rules have to change. The rules have to change. And that's what we've been working on with the legislators. Yeah, right.
Relative to that, theoretically, let's say we buy them out either by eminent domain or their generous willingness to sell. Would we then fall heir to an assessment fee that would be the same as the high rates we're paying because we then have to pay off the cost of the purchase?
The answer to that is it depends, probably. But ideally, it wouldn't make sense to do it unless the rates would go down, right? So you have to look at the analysis and say, is there a way to cut some of these costs out of here? Either the cost of operation or getting some grants to write down a portion or getting forgiveness for part of the loans. Is there a way to cut significant chunks of these costs out of here so that when it happens, it actually lowers rates in town? There'd be no reason to do it if it didn't lower rates. So that's analysis that needs to be done. We don't have that yet. Right behind you.
Isn't there a way to go in through like a back door and do an audit on CalWorks to get them out quicker?
Calwater?
Calwater?
Not at the county level. That's a PUC oversight issue. If their level, PUC regulates their level of service. So for example, Calwater has some service benchmarks they're supposed to meet. And I imagine they produce reports that say that they've got X amount of customer satisfaction and they have this kind of response time, et cetera, et cetera. In the town of Lucerne, because the population is probably small relative to the whole Calwater system, the issues of their responses here probably don't show up easily to the PUC, which is why complaining to the PUC about response times and things like that make a difference. That's why when I said contact the California Public Utility Commission, write a letter to them if you're seeing these things, if you're seeing response times, and we'll include some of that in the testimony too. If you have some stories you want to share, I'll definitely include that.
I did do that, and it still took them 3 days to patch up the
That's
patch down.
that's actually a story that's worth sharing about service levels. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing about, I believe that Calwater is doing, and this is going to sound really bad, I'm going to say it to you, that I think that there's some criminal activity in this company. So let me give you an example. When I got my $1,800 water bill back in July, I called them up and they says, what the, and they're going, oh, well, that's what it is. And so, naturally I had to shell it out, But it was really funny. The next billing cycle, I had no bill. Now, how can that be? How can I go from $1,800 one month to the next month I have no bill? And then the next billing cycle, I had a $30 bill. Is it because I have a big mouth and I'm loud and I'm aggressive and I'm mean? No. I think they're covering up stuff. I think this is some kind of criminal investigation that should be done against this company. That would be a certainly great avenue about it.
This is our DA, by the way, Don Anderson.
And I also wanted to say that the way that they function is incredible. They will do one little block, and then they'll cover it up, and then they will come to another little block, and they'll cover it up. And we're talking about gross inefficiency in how they run this company. And they kind of shovel that back on us poor damn little consumers, Something has to be done. I think an investigation has to be done soon. We have to use every avenue possible because it's not only going to affect us, it's affecting the county.
So, Doug, thanks for the If you have reason to believe there's criminal activity on part of the company, gather the evidence, because the DA typically doesn't launch investigations just because people are upset about their water bill. They'll launch it because there's evidence of criminal activity. So if there is evidence, then that's something that you need to get to the DA. Is that a fair statement?
That's true. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm kind of concerned about what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about a certain water, the problems you're having. So right now I'm just listening and learning.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I live on Rancho Vista, and there's 2 people in my home. My water bill normally runs about $140. My next 2 neighbors, there's 2 people in their home. Theirs runs over $300. It's like, I don't know how I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
How they can have 2 people, right
If
next
the
door
meters
to
are
each other.
accurate, so let's assume the meters are accurate. If they are, the water use can vary from household to household based on something as simple as a toilet that runs slightly and with a constant leak in the toilet. So one of the first things, if you care about water use in your home, make sure you don't have any leaks anywhere, and make sure that your toilet's working properly, because that, honestly, it adds up pretty significantly.
And at the rates that they're charging us, any extra usage costs astronomical.
Yeah, any extra usage goes
And
up.
if you use twice as much water as your neighbor, you'll pay twice as much on your bill.
Some people have low flush toilets. Some people put a brick in their old tank to make sure it doesn't use as much water. There's lots of things people do. Some people are much more conscious. They'll have one of those little valves in the shower head where when they lather up the water. But yeah. I'm sorry, you're next. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm next?
Yeah, you go over there.
Oh, okay. I don't live in the community, but I heard about this a while back, and one of the things I originally heard was that one of the reasons for the high bill is that the pipes needed to be refurbished.
Yeah.
And I know that the water in this town is, sorry guys, horrible.
It's horrible.
Now, what I wonder is how much of those ridiculously high fees that are paid here have to go to updating the pipes? And do they have any requirements for how quickly they do it? When Doug was talking about a little piece here, a little piece there, I mean, aren't there any requirements about that?
I don't know the answer to your question. What I do know is that they typically, in their testimony, which we haven't seen yet, they file their requirements. And there have been a series of data requests that the Division of Ratepayer Advocates have asked of them. I just got a disc of all the data requests. So the questions have been asked. We're allowed to ask questions too. We're allowed to ask those questions. And so I would say on the bottom of your form, if you have any specific questions you think ought to be asked of Calwater, I'm allowed to issue a data request and ask those questions. And I think we ought to do that. So please ask that. The short answer to your question, though, is they are supposed to have a plan. And they're supposed to ask for the amount of money needed to implement that plan. If they ask for the money and get the money and then don't implement the plan, there's not a lot of checks and balances around keeping them accountable except the citizenry. So it's probably important. That's why I thought one of the purposes of LCWO, Lucerne Community Water Organization, was at least when Sophie Jensen was alive, was to keep track of what Calwater said they would do versus what they actually did. And they were to meet with the organization once a quarter. And I don't think that's still happening. It would be good if the community reformed that. Yeah.
LCWO is now non-existent.
Yeah, okay. So that answers the question there. So if the community wants to keep track of what they say they're going to do versus what they actually do, it would be good to have this a little subcommittee do that, because those are really the only ways to keep track of it.
What's a data request?
A data request is a list of questions that Calwater must answer as part of the California Public Utility General Rate Case process.
Only in the general rate case, or can it come from the county itself?
Well, it can come from the county, but through the general rate case process. So we can ask them we can issue a data request, and in order for us to file our testimony, we're asking for this information, and they're required to give it to us. John.
So with rates between $300 and, in Doug's case, $1,800 a month, that makes punching a well sound like an attractive alternative. What are county obstacles to punching wells on my property, for example? I have a lot.
Jerry's done a little investigation there. You want to?
Some people in this area.
Speak up, Jerry. It's good to be loud.
Some people in this area are under the impression that there's a water moratorium about wells. There's not. Anyone can drill a well in the Lucerne area. There are rules and guidelines you have to go by and permits, but it can be done.
I'd like to point out that some of those rules are prohibitive on small parcels.
Yeah.
But you can put 4 homes on one well. So if you have a
Wells can
large
be done,
well,
but not everybody can put one.
Right, and it
But you
costs,
can
I
share-
put a well in on my property, and it's not cheap. It costs $18,000.
no, but I talked to some well drillers, and if that's the way the community is going to end up going,
Yeah.
they will cut some rates. The pump guys say they'll cut some rates on buying the pumps. So they're out there willing to help us, but until
Yeah.
the Board of Supervisors makes a move next Tuesday,
Well, and also to say, it's probably one of these situations where the people who can afford it will do it, and then that will leave those who can't, fending for themselves, holding the rest of the bag. And that's not going to, so we're still going to need to fight, right?
Denise, we're still going to have to fight for it, but if the community as a whole voted to go this way, I'm sure there's a way we can make it happen. It's not going to happen this year or next year, but it will happen.
And John, Calwater says the average bill is $158 per month. 316
That's including everybody. They have a legal way to do that.
Yeah, I know. The analysis includes everybody.
It doesn't apply to the people that actually use water.
We did argue that, and Alan, would you stand up a minute here? Alan has done a lot of the rate analysis for the county and looking at Lucerne's rates versus the rates of other systems around. He's working out of the administrative office, and he's a godsend, really. And he looked into the average water rate. He said that we had some questions as to how that average.
You're going to bring that up when you
Yeah.
advocate for it. So
Yeah, and write it down too, you know, if, like I said, if you have ideas that you don't think we're not considering, write them down. One back here, and then here, and then here.
Is Marymount College informed of the rate increases?
Yes, they are, and it's pretty substantial, and they're not happy about the water rates. So, we also think that Calwater has not included Marymount in their calculations for the rest of the citizenry. We think they need to do that. So,
I'm a relatively new resident of Lucerne last year, and I've rebuilt a piece of property on Highway 20. My company, which consists of my parents and my aunt, we own 7 properties within Lucerne and 16 home mobile home park in Nice. Our mobile home park in Nice is a private water system within their water system. It's sub-metered. We own the water meters and do the billing. Our regulations within that private system is that, given the unincorporated status of Nice, that it falls, if there was an issue or a concern on behalf of the residents, our meters would fall on county weights and measures. Given the private ownership of the Lucerne, with Calwater, has that been explored as far as being a thorn in their side with their meter calibration issues? I had the same experience as the doctor this summer. My home was under construction, was unoccupied. My bill was almost $500. When I occupied my residence and actually did pay the bill on purpose, given the issue I had with them, my bill dropped to $130, and I was occupying it with myself, my fiance, and she's open. So
you're
given
thinking
that,
of making meters?
Exactly, and given that we're unincorporated and it's a private water company, Cook County Weights and Measures perhaps it's more that. I don't know if it's a possibility, but given my situation in Nice and
Well,
regulations.
I do know that Nice is not under the California Public Utility Commission, they're under their own board. They're mutual water. I don't know the answer to that. Anita, do you know?
Well, at least my regulations actually come from the state because of the mobile home status. So given the number of mobile home parks that exist within the area.
Oh, maybe for the mobile homes, yeah, that might be a possibility. We'll look into that.
It's more difficult when you're talking about a private entity. However, if you believe that the meters are in error, if you believe your bills are in error, and certainly the CPUC is reporting something dramatically lower than what you're all actually paying, you can complain to the CPUC about this process, and I would think 300, 400 complaints might get their attention
They
also.
notice 10, where there's like a jump in 10. I mean, complaints to the PUC are kind of rare. And so when, if everyone in town were to really think about what you're complaining about, you can't just say, my bill's too high, you have to give them facts. But if you're really giving them facts and some concerns about how Calwater's operating, those are the kinds of complaints they investigate, Calwater's required to deal with. It affects their metrics with the PUC in terms of their performance. So Lucerne can really make a difference just by, that's one of the action items that we take that will make your voice known.
Okay, about wells. I had 2 people come into my office. They spent $10,000 on putting a well in. Guess what? They got down to gray clay. No water. Just putting a well in doesn't mean you're going to get water. And they spent that money, and that's not coming back, okay? The other thing I was going to say in my letter, which I wrote back in July, was that there is no reason why we can't have another water company and people choose. We could use the same water pipes and, some kind of logarithmic number system could be determined how much water comes from Calwater, how much comes. You want to bet that if there's a choice between Calwater and our own water company, who's going to go? It's going to be our own. So what I'm saying is that, I think we should put our own water company. We don't have to buy theirs. We can put our own in.
For that amount of money, you might be able to.
Are you kidding? For $3 million, I think you could do it, $30 million is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Relative to that, would it be possible for us to become part of the Nice water system? Could we buy into that and just cut out?
Well, again, the issue is who owns the pipes and the meters and the plant and all that in Lucerne, and how does that, is that a takeover of the system, or are you going to duplicate a system? Somebody's got to spend some money, and that's going to be the issue. Whether, that might be an option, but unless there's a really good...
There's a lot of issues with utilities and competition, and this is a privately owned utility.
Yeah.
And if it was a governmental entity that attempted to compete, it would likely be considered a takings, and we'd be back at the same having to buy them option that we're at now.
Right. Yes.
Is there, well, I have a couple of questions, but is there a website or someplace we can actually get the information on this whole thing, because we're new to the area? We're not really.
There hasn't been, but I will start posting on, let me get the site up here. LucerneStories.org is where I'll post information.
Okay.
And I will have a tab there where you get information about what's happening.
Thank you. But
there's not a lot of information yet, other than we know that we know that the testimony on the county, from the county is due in March. We can gather data before then and read everybody else's stuff, but our testimony is due in March.
Denise, I do have the number, if any of you want to go online to the CPUC for Calwater. It's application 12-07-007.
hold on a second.
Okay, I'll say it again slowly. Sure.
Wait, let me put it up here. Tell me what it is.
Application 12-07-007. The application was filed July 5th, 2012.
Okay. So in the PUC files, that's just listed as A rather than application. It means application.
Right.
12, is this right, 12? Did I get that right?
12-07.
What you're going to see is it's going to say A12-07.
Yeah, I got it. 12-07.
It's the number that you need to plug in.
Right. Okay.
It seems to me that there's actually no guarantee that if anybody took over this water system that they'd ever be able to do anything less than Calwater. I mean, I don't know anything about Calwater, and I'm not defending them on any level, but I'm saying that you have to do some kind of reasonable analysis of this thing before the guy gets excited about taking over a water company and then charging more than Calwater did. So the other thing I'm thinking about is that if in fact Calwater gets this application increased, that increases the value of their company. So it would be great, it would be a huge effort to stop them from doing this, because in fact if they want to sell, it's like anything else. If you raise the rent of your house, then the value of your house goes up. So in fact, that's the good fight to fight right now, is to stop them from this rate.
The good fight, yeah, and that's what the county's working on. So let's put that on here.
Property values are down for them as well as they are for us. So for them to think that they're going to get top dollar for their property, when we can't even sell our property, is totally
well, and the thing to keep in mind is that the near-term fight is the rate fight, right? That's the near-term fight, and you're right. If they got a huge rate increase, it would literally cause the whole cost of their system, because their cost is valued on what kind of revenues they're getting too. So this is an important fight, and we're going to be there, and that's why telling your stories, the action you can take, I would urge you, please tell your story, share what you know, share your ideas. I have a form up on the website, LucerneStories.org. If you don't feel like writing on this piece of paper, you can go online and go there and fill it out. Feel free to write a long letter to me if you'd rather do that. But I'll be gathering those stories and using them with this rate hearing.
We can just say Denise Rusing, Lakeport.
Yeah, it's if you need the address of the courthouse, it's 255 North 4th Street, Lakeport. And you can just say Board of Supervisors, Denise Rusing. Yeah.
A little word on the Public Utilities Commission. They received letters of protest concerning service, quality of product, timely maintenance, whatever. Those are all black marks come rate hike time. And there's nothing that a public utility wants to hear more than have customers going to the Public Utilities Commission. Those three words, those three letters, PUC, that's a poison pill for public utilities. So if everybody writes letters to the Public Utilities Commission that are, like as you were saying, that are correct, not just like you say, my rate's high, but write letters concerning the quality of your service, the way the meters are operating, the pipes, the leaks, this, that, the other thing. Those are all huge black marks that come rate hike time.
Especially if you're seeing waste. You know, they filed for information, or they filed for money to fix pipes and things like that. if you think that money's being wasted, if there's ways, I'll just give you an example. We run water systems here, right? We have, typically, Upper Lake runs a water system. They have like 450 or 500 people on their water system. They have one person with a truck who runs the local office and then runs around fixing the leaks in the system. And they happen to have one of the lower water rates around because they're able to manage their costs pretty efficiently. And so that, they may not be investing in their capital plans as much as they should. Every water system has its problems, but they have figured out how to kind of keep their costs down managing the system. So if you see things that you think could be, that are done in a wasteful manner, that's the kind of evidence that's really helpful.
Well, one other thing concerning that, what I was talking about, most everybody's cell phone has a camera on it.
Yeah. In fact, I was just given some pictures of Calwater closing down the driveway. Yeah, Charlie.
I wanted to know if does the PUC consider what the company is requiring as an internal rate of return on their assets?
Yes.
And is there a way to find out what that internal rate of return is? And if it's too high compared to what's going on in our economy, can't we get them, the question is, can we get them to reduce it?
Yeah, the answer to that question, typically in the utility world, the utilities that file for these kinds of things, in agreement, because they're kind of a quasi-monopoly, and they've agreed to be regulated as a quasi-monopoly, they also have a special hearing that's separate from the general rate case on their maximum allowed rate of return on their assets. And that's a hearing, that's not this hearing, but it's typically a hearing that happens every few years or maybe every decade, but certainly every few years. They want to see it higher, the PUC and others want to make sure it's regulated properly. There is an argument, it's probably not going to be part of the general rate case, but I think we could make it in here just to let them know it's coming. And that based on anybody investing, it's kind of difficult to say investing in Lake County means you need a different rate of return for your assets. Their rate of return is what it is, but they're going to have a hearing on that, and we should probably take part in that too when it happens. They're right here.
So does the water company have to pay their rates also that we have to pay?
No, they don't. Typically. Yeah, they typically include that in their costs. Way in the back.
I just have a question. How many of us have lodged a complaint in writing with the water company and the PUC?
How many
Have
people
a show
have
of
filed a
hands? How
PUC
many have
complaint?
done that? See, everybody in this room should be raising their hand.
Okay, how many have filed a water company complaint only? Okay, and then how many have done a PUC complaint? All right, so there's a good number of them happening, but not, you're right, the whole room's not. Lenny?
Informational for you. It was 8 years ago at our first meeting, somebody said, they're not even reading my meters. I went around, took 30 pictures of people's meters underneath 3 feet of water and mud and everything. Set it into the public utilities. They were slapped upside the head with a fine. They rolled the fine right in for our bills. So anything that happens to them,
I don't think they can roll the fine.
they rolled it right in. Anything that happens to them is going to happen to us. We're the ratepayers. Anything that they're slapped with is going to come right after us.
I think they will, if they do it, they will do it illegal. That's illegal?
Correct.
Right, that's illegal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Be that done? Okay.
Yeah.
You may or may not be able to answer this, but given my relatively new status and the property I purchased on Highway 20 that I rehabilitated the home on was actually some commercial residential. I received a supplemental tax bill that was way beyond what I purchased the property for and beyond what I put into the property. On appealing that and losing my appeal, I was told that the county understandably takes into consideration the best and highest use of my property to base the supplemental tax bill on. Given your valuation, potentially, given that we don't know what it is yet, of California water system, California Water's property they own and maintain here, I would be interested to know if the county is taking that avenue to value their property on its best and highest use, given that it's potentially worth $20 to $30 million.
So,
The property, that value, whatever value it would have today would be valued at the point of sale, because there has to be change in ownership.
right, although the value, and I'm not the assessor, he's actually elected for the position, so that'd be a good question to ask him. But typically commercial, so let's say if you're a cable company, let's not even talk water. If you're a cable company, there's been a lot of case law around how corporate assets are valued. It could be the value of the property for other uses, et cetera. But typically, the value of the business that's run factors in, and it factors in. I don't know the formula, but there is a formula that typically
Capitalize the income.
So I would think, and I'm just speculating now, but I would think there would be some kind of factor based on, the value of the water system coming back in taxes. I don't really know though. I don't know the answer to that.
It's an income approach to value. You have to capitalize the income stream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could the county give tax breaks to people who want to put in a gray water system and or gutters on their roofs so they can collect rainwater?
Right. Well, the county is a tax collector, not necessarily the ones that make the taxes. The county could have, when we had a redevelopment agency, we could have special programs that we would offer for certain kinds of things. Like we had a special program when redevelopment existed for upgrading the facades on the businesses, for example, and you could come up with a program. I suspect, and county council help me here, the county can have a program and you have a sort of a public good involved in a way of funding a program, and we have to have an analysis that says that it's for the public good, et cetera. I'm a big fan of gray water systems. I have one actually in my house, and turns out California State Code allows laundry to landscape gray water without any significant permits. So you can do laundry to landscape because the laundry has the washer has a pump in it, and it pumps. You got to be able to pump that water out into the landscape. And there's ways to do it right, and there's ways to do it really kludgy. But laundry landscape's a good idea. You could actually have landscape running off of the, if you had a washer dryer, then you could run your landscape water off of that.
I'm talking about an incentive for people to do this.
There's nothing planned. What we do in our special districts where we are the water company, we can have conservation programs and conservation incentives. It's going to be a difficult thing to figure out how to make an incentive program work because you got to be able to show that there's a benefit to all the taxpayers that are putting the money into it, et cetera. So I'm not sure how we make it work, but if we could figure it out, I'm good with it. I can't think of it right now. It's off the top of my head. Any last questions? Yeah.
I actually called before today and asked, is there some way that you can incentive reward people who keep their water usage deliberately low? Oh, no, we're not worried about that. I'm in California, I'm always watching water.
Yeah.
And I said, he's way less. Oh, but you have a big slide.
Yeah, there's not well, that's actually a really good story because I'll tell you what, the California Public Utility Commission, they not only regulate water, they regulate electricity. And there's a direct correlation between the amount of water used in the state and the amount of electricity used in the state because pumps have, electricity is used to produce the clean water. And when there's a company like Calwater, they should care about conservation. And if they don't, I can tell you the California Public Utility Commission would be very interested in that.
Well, I'm happy to use that.
So that's one of the stories that we have to tell.
1% of your bill actually is supposed to go to conservation programs.
Yeah, they're supposed to care about that.
Well,
Yeah.
to reiterate, I have asked her.
Listen, let's call on somebody who hasn't spoken yet.
Is it not true though that when you get into conservation, the water company then raises the rate because you're not using it?
Yeah, on the electric world, and I don't know if they have something similar in the water world, I don't think they do yet, but in the electric side, the utility companies were actually incentivized to encourage conservation programs by having what was called a balancing account, where they put money into it that was really dedicated. In fact, they got shareholder money for including conservation. And these balancing accounts meant that if they lost money, that it would roll into future rates in the future in some form or another. The challenge with any utility is the fixed cost, right? They built a plant, it's this big, and it's going to be spread somehow. That's the challenge, and reducing those fixed costs will be the challenge of this particular water system. Jerry?
Yeah, if you read this new proposed increase, you'll see in there, if you read it thoroughly enough,
that one of their objectives is to recoup the usage that we've already saved. They didn't get that money on it, so now they're crying wolf and saying, well, we're not making that much money because we don't have the service that great. So we need to make up for it to pay for what we've got.
That's right, that's one of the reasons they're getting rid of it.
In addition to the patio work. Yeah.
Do you know how many vacation, what the percentage of vacation homes in Lucerne is?
25%.
25%.
Because those people don't have to, they're not billed every month, they're only billed at the time that they're actually occupying the property, right?
Every month. They're billed every month as well.
Because I went away, I was out of town last winter and I was able to shut down my water.
Well, yeah, I would imagine if you shut off your service altogether and actually shut the service off, that you don't have to. But, and that's the and by the way, the county-owned systems, that's a little tougher rule in the county-owned systems. We don't let people shut off their service temporarily without having to pay to rejoin the system, which is a pretty substantial amount of money.
They do have a reconnection fee, but it's very modest. But if you were gone for 6 months, we well would.
Well, that may be an argument, actually, that may be an argument for how to help them recoup some of the rates from others, like have a reconnection.
You can't have your sewer cut off, then you can have your PG&E cut off.
Right. So that's, maybe it's their own policies, maybe that would be argued.
If I can repeat one thing before we leave here, I got at least 3 calls or responses from people saying, well, yeah, I can't be at the meeting. Would you go? Are you going? And let me know what's happened. That's regular work. The people here got to stay involved. You've got to get your friends and neighbors involved. We can't just let George do it, as the old saying used to go. We've got to keep busy on this and don't let the action stop. Okay?
And again, tell your story. I promised that I would end this at around 5:30, so we have about 12 more minutes. Are there any last questions or anything? Okay. How about announcements? Are there any announcements that you have for the community? That would be a good one. Any others?
Is this the open forum?
Yeah, we're in open forum now. We're actually moving into announcements. So do you have any other things you need to say?
Yes, I moved here 3 years ago from Nevada, and there I picked up KRCB in Rowan Park, a PBS station. I could pick up many San Francisco PBS stations, and I get up here and find out there is no public service television station and public broadcasting service television station. Now, I'm concerned because since I started this program, a number of people have come up to me and told me they actually learned to read from Sesame Street.
Right. So you're worried about the children.
Yes, exactly. So what do the low-income families do, ones who can't afford the ever-increasing cable rates? What do they do with their children out of school? What can they watch? They can't watch PBS because they can't afford the cable rates. Now, I've been in touch with the people at KRCB, and they say it would take $25,000 for the equipment to be mounted on Mount Kanaka so we could enjoy PBS. Now, it's not only Sesame Street on PBS. They have the Liar with Neil report and a news program.
Yeah, no, that's great. PBS is great. Listen, you've brought this to my attention before.
Yes.
If you can get me that report from them or a cost estimate or something from them, I will work to put it in the county. How's that?
All right,
you need to get me the data because I can't come up with just put a line item in the budget. But if there's something I do think that public broadcasting information matters. So if you have that information, that's something I do.
All right.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just a point of clarification. You said it's a quasi-monopoly. Isn't this a total monopoly? What does a quasi-monopoly mean?
Well, they call it a quasi-monopoly only because it's a regulatory compact. They're given a territory in exchange. They are regulated by the PUC. But the reality is that somebody else could punch a well or form a little water. I mean, there's things that can happen. There's no rule that says you can't do that. It's quasi because it's competitively ridiculous to try, but to form another water unit next to it. But it's not illegal. John?
And one quick announcement, somebody left their glasses up here at the table, sunglasses.
Thank you.
I've just been curious for some time now. I remember initially when 8 years ago they began this rate increase battle with us, and at that time my water would either smell like the lake or like a swimming pool, chlorine. And 8 years later, we've had a multitude of rate increases and significant rate increases, and today my kitchen water smells either like the lake or a swimming pool. So what is that new plant doing?
You're asking me like I know the answer. I have been given a brief summary of the new plant. Supposedly the new plant makes it healthier than it used to, but you'll have to ask Calwater that question. I really don't know.
Has anybody else experienced this?
So water quality, by the way, is a really good story.
It's a really good example of a complaint that you can write to the water company and the CPUC.
Exactly. Yes, Doug?
Okay, who grants the permits to the water company to run this company in the lake? Is that going to be the county of Lake?
The state.
State. And what would make them not be able to get their permit renewed? If they don't have a permit, they can't work. If they lose a permit, to me, that's a...
Yeah, it would have to be some violation of the lake situation.
That's
Or
the
even
State Department of Public Health.
Yeah, State Department of Public Health.
They have to, fail their inspections. Somebody has to go in and look, make sure all of their inspections are done. I ran a small water company for about 5 years, and there are tons of inspections that have to be done on an annual basis.
The California Department of Public Health does also accept complaints.
Yes.
And we as a county, we deal with that all the time with our water systems. They tell us what has to be done. The challenge with complaining to them, though, is it's almost always real costs involved. Well, it's public health, but there are real costs involved in meeting California Department of Public Health. And those are costs that the PUC would say are reasonable. So it's a bit of a catch-22 on that one. Yeah.
Here's another catch. 6 years ago, flow in the water company, getting together, I was there too. And I said, they want to build this new system, clean water. And then he said, of course, the 16 or 17 miles of piping underneath is a different issue. And I said, then it's got a different price. Because the water that comes to my house smells like a pond.
Right.
Or swimming pool, depends on when. So it's different because our plant is just fine. What you get out there, well, we'll just have to replace that. How many millions is that? Or we don't know, right?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And so what we're doing, the old pipes that work like sieves, is whatever is draining into those water tanks.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. The infrastructure here is very old. Yeah, it really is.
And that's what, I won't drink, I have distilled water at home.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, we run water systems in the county, it's not cheap to put those pipes in. It's going to cost some money to do that. The real question is there a way to do it from Lucerne at less expensive than Calwater? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that, and the only way we're going to know is to ask the question and find out how much it would cost to do the analysis. So I think we could do a cursory analysis on what options are with the Board of Supervisors saying yes on Tuesday. After that, it's going to cost some money to do a real analysis of cost, and that money would have to come from somewhere. So we'll have to figure all that out. Okay. Last question.
One more comment. I'd like to see something instructing people how to sends water samples whenever somebody like that gets a bath and water. There's some place where you can send a water sample and get it tested.
Yeah, Jared,
And
where's
we
that?
should, everybody should know how to do that.
You know what, once I have that information, I'll put it up on this particular website.
That would be really great.
Yeah, if somebody could get me, Jared, if you can give me that information, I'll put it up.
It's Alpha Labs out in County.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh, it's AAA's here. My carpet is in the AAA. Anyway, thank you for coming. Thank you to the student